Today, our guest is Dr. Evelyn Johnson, the CEO of the Pesky Learning Center. Dr. Johnson, thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much for inviting me, Ron.
So when the schools in Idaho closed last March, I'm sure there were probably several kids, students who were already having challenges in their reading and literacy. How do you think the closure of the schools affected them this spring?
Yeah, I think just as we've seen the pandemic have this disproportional impact in terms of negative health and economic impact in communities that are lower socioeconomic status, the Latino community, the Native American community, we're unfortunately going to see that same disproportional impact in terms of education. Long before schools closed, there was already an opportunity gap that in which students from these populations unfortunately don't always have access to the kinds of reading and learning opportunities that they need. There was a really interesting report that just came out from the Brookings Institution that tried to quantify the anticipated impact of school closures. And so they took data from about 5 million students across the nation, and using information from summer learning loss as well as other historical data, like when schools have been closed for natural disasters like Hurricane Katrina, for example, and use that to make projections about what this very long-term school closure impact will be. And they're suggesting that kids coming back to school in the fall will be at about 65% of their learning rate in reading of where they would otherwise normally be. But when you dig a little further into the report, it's really clear that that overall loss is not going to impact equally, right? So they're projecting that kids who were already performing really well will actually probably grow during this time because they'll continue to engage in reading and be exposed to other opportunities, whereas kids who are at about the 25th percentile or lower, and again, tend to be students from very marginalized populations, will unfortunately stand to lose the most ground. And of course, that's just going to
So usually, even in normal school years, when we get to the summer, as we are now, and the students go home, there's this thing called the summer slide, where students seem to go backwards because, for one reason or another, they don't have that same stimulus or that same learning during the summer. What can be done? I suspect you probably think that the students who are struggling will probably be affected by that summer slide the most. What can we do, or what can parents do during the summer to try to mitigate the summer slide as much as possible?
Yeah, so, the easiest thing to recommend is that parents and with their child every day read. It's great if you can do that for 15 to 20 minutes, but even if you can only manage 5, that is hands down the best thing that you can do. It exposes kids to language and ideas and vocabulary. And it's just a time where you can connect, right? Where you can kind of tune out everything else and connect with your child. But then there are a lot of online resources. I'm going to just share my screen here to make sure that people have access to these websites. There are so many resources that offer information for parents, and that itself can be overwhelming, right? To sift through like what is out there and what's quality. So my 2 go-tos in terms of reading resources are PBS Kids and Reading Rockets. They both have just an endless supply of very easy to do, engaging, fun literacy and learning activities for parents and their children.
Are there things that the school districts can do, or you think the school districts should be doing this summer to try to build a stronger bridge between where the students were in the spring and where they are hopefully coming in the fall. Are there things that educators and the school districts can be doing?
Yeah, I think that overall the schools and teachers' response to trying to deliver uh, learning during this really difficult time has been tremendous. We work across the state with about 7 districts, and those teachers are also trying to put together learning packets and activities that parents can use with their children. They're also, teachers are also quite resourceful and really knowledgeable about what resources are out there online, and I know that lots of schools are sharing that information. And so I think, really that's the best strategy, is the more we can get these, like, again, very practical, very hands-on activities into the hands of parents and be there as a support and a guide for them. I think that's one really important thing that we can all do over the summer.
So it's very likely that the schools are going to face budget cuts this next school year. If they, well, they are. So if you were advising the school leaders, where do you think that we should put the biggest priority and really try to mitigate those cuts the most as much as possible?
Yeah, I've been really excited by Governor Little's emphasis on early literacy, and the task force that he put together, their emphasis on early literacy. I know that there's so much need out there in schools, but when we're working with constrained resources, I think the investment in making sure that all kids get off to a really strong start through development of reading skills is really the most important thing that schools can do. And so prioritizing that, along with being ready in the fall to assess where students are and how they've individually been impacted by the school closures and just all of the other stuff that comes with this pandemic. Those are the key investments I would recommend that schools make.
So it's really possible that we will be in either a blended learning situation this fall, or hopefully not, but if there's a surge, we could find ourselves again where the kids are at home. What's special, especially when it comes to reading and literacy, what is the effect of that remote learning? Are there things that we should be doing now or thinking about now to prepare for the fall in case we're back in this situation?
Absolutely. One of the things that we are doing as a center is we are really rethinking the way that we provide training and support to teachers. Our team has always had online courses, as well as engaged in distance mentoring and coaching, just because our state is so big and travel is difficult in winter months into remote areas. And we've just doubled down on those efforts. And so our team, for example, is creating a new course called Developing Effective and Engaging Reading Instruction Online, which just models for teachers how they can use the evidence-based practices that they are already skilled in, but then deliver them through a remote setting. And I think the more that teachers can spend time this summer really thinking through how to translate what happens in the live classroom through the online setting, I think the better position everyone will be to make that change or pivot should we have to do that in the fall.
Are there courses that the teachers can sign up for this summer with you to, whether online or whatever, to develop, further develop their remote learning or teaching skills?
There are, and I actually have oh, sorry. I thought I was skilled at Zoom. I'm going to share my screen here. We have information about our courses that teachers can come to our website, and we have several already put together that are focused on self-regulation as well as evidence-based reading instruction. And then, as I mentioned, we have a new course. We will have it available starting June 30th that is specifically designed to help teachers deliver effective reading instruction online.
Oh, this is great. This is really helpful information, I think, for teachers especially. So thank you for sharing that. So, you know, you said something interesting to me as we were preparing for this interview, that really reading is about comprehension. For our lay people, you know, not teachers necessarily, but for parents, can you explain what you mean about why comprehension, what it is and why it's so important, and what parents can do to further help their kids while they're at home this summer and maybe even next fall with that?
Yeah, if you will indulge my professor side for a minute,
Definitely,
I have an explanation that I hope will be helpful. Sorry, I don't think I'm sharing the right thing. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to try that again. Here we go. Oh, there we go. So reading is a really, really complex skill, and ultimately the goal of reading is comprehension. And so just to walk you through an example, what it takes to read. So here we have the word bat, but in order to read that word, kids have to be able to recognize each of those individual letters, and then they have to map the sounds that those letters make and string them out. So they have to know to say b, at, hold that in their working memory, all of those sounds, and then go back and string them together to form a word. And then as they're reading, they may read a sentence like this: the boy had a bat. And so they may retrieve one of the meanings of the word bat. Right now, lots of you may be thinking about a baseball bat, but then as they continue to read, they have to adjust that meaning of the word to fit with the context, right? So the rest of this story suggests that the meaning of the word bat that we should have pulled was a bat, right? A flying bat. And so this all happens really quickly for skilled readers, but there's a lot to the process. And so one of the ways that parents and teachers, for that matter, can really help students get off to a strong start is through the language and vocabulary development. We're learning more and more that when kids come into school with extensive vocabulary and exposure to ideas and to language, that breaking the code, right? So being able to map the letters to sounds becomes much easier, because as they are sounding out words, they already have those words stored in what's called our mental lexicon, right? So all of that really facilitates the process of reading. So it's why that number one recommendation for parents at home is to read to your child, and read a wide range of books, stories, but books that also help children learn about different things, animals, about ships and trucks, and all the things that kids are interested in. Because when you do that, again, when kids come into school and teachers start teaching them how to decode, right? They teach them the phonics or the code to reading. That process just becomes that much more smooth for kids who are able to come in with that vocabulary and comprehension background.
And how young can students be, or not students, but children be, when a parent starts reading to them? And I think a lot of parents also sort of don't understand that they can read to their kids until they're quite old. until until their child just says, hey, I can do it myself and I don't need you anymore. So what is that age range roughly that parents should really follow your advice and read 20 minutes a day at least?
So 20 minutes is too long for infants, but really kids should be exposed to books like immediately, right? So even newborns, I read, I remember the Harry Potter book. My kids are in college now, but when they were first born, Harry Potter was, I think, in its maybe second or third book. And so I just read Harry Potter out loud to my infant son. And, you know, as they get older, obviously we read books that were more appropriate and engaging and colorful, and board books that they could grab and hold and manipulate. But reading from a very young age, and as you know, continuing to read even as kids are older is really, really important.
Well, you know, I appreciate everything the Lee Pesky Center does, and you do great work. You're so knowledgeable about reading. You're the go-to experts for all of us in Idaho when it comes to reading and literacy and comprehension. So I just want to thank you for everything that you do, leading that, and also everything that the Lee Pesky Center does for our families and for our kids. So Dr. Johnson, thank you for being with us today in the Zoom classroom. And I hope this is helpful for our parents who watch this, and gives them some hints on how they can help their kids this summer.
Yeah,
So thank you.
Thank you.